to the Packers. I guess Gutekunst talked to the media today, or at least to one of the ESPN.com reporters. And listen, what I appreciate about people in football is when you can just be candid. And I think there's a line, right? You don't have to just come out and say, this guy sucks, or, our defensive coordinator just blows. Even if that's what you think, there's a balance you have to have in a team environment, right? I can say whatever I want. The only people I have to answer to in terms of what I say is me. Like, it just reflects me. There's no one like this isn't a team of 7 people right behind me that are also on the air, right? If I threw maybe the producer under the bus, that'd be a scumbag. Hey, this guy fucked up a graphic, but I would never do that, and it never happens, right? But in football, everything's such a team-oriented operation, and everyone is accountable in terms they get their opportunity to talk. They're under the microscope. You got to be very careful what you say, especially when it comes to a quarterback. And I think when you look at the Packers, their quarterback situation is already settled. Jordan Love's not going to be their quarterback next year. And Gutekunst said that, and here's why, really quick though, before I go into what he said, I give them credit for not picking up his 5th-year option. Because I think we see this time and time again where teams pick up an option and then immediately regret it. And when it comes to a quarterback or a wide receiver or a defensive end, it can be very, very expensive. And when you pick up these expensive options and then you turn on the player during that 4th year, you're screwed because you can't get out of it. Ideally, you would like to trade it, but if the guy can't play, no one is taking that salary. So they gave him a very, very, cost-effective on their salary cap extension for like $11 million, which obviously if they could do it over again, they wouldn't even have given him an extension. But you have to have a contingency plan if he is good, because you don't truly know till a guy plays games and it's the bright lights. Well, they've seen him now. And his last several games have been a disaster. I think he has 8 interceptions. But if you just watch him, he's just not very good. And listen, football's hard. A lot of quarterbacks, the overwhelming majority of quarterbacks relative to the top, 10, 15 guys are not that good. And it's very, very difficult to win with. And that's Jordan Love. And like Gutekunst said, he's got 10 games. A lot is on the line over the rest of the season. What he's essentially saying is like, unless a miracle happens, he's not going to be our quarterback anymore. Now, I think, in some organizations, you would get blamed because there was an owner for screwing up the Aaron Rodgers situation, for not figuring it out, for ultimately trading him. But when this team has no owner, like, these guys are going to get another quarterback. But this was one season that's going to be on their resume. Ultimately, Rodgers ended up wanting out. They pivoted, and they didn't screw themselves financially. But whoever their next quarterback is, and I would imagine if they keep losing, they are going to be in the mix to draft a guy really high. That guy better be good, and he better be good fast, or these people will lose their job. Because the Green Bay Packers, the Pittsburgh Steelers, Alabama football, Texas football, USC football, there are certain franchises that just do not tolerate losing. And Green Bay has been lucky enough with Favre and Rodgers. They've just always won. They've just been winning consistently for 3 decades. And the moment, it's one thing if you lose a game, but Rodgers threw 3 touchdowns, you're like, our defense could be a little better. When your quarterback play is this shitty, it feels like your whole franchise is going nowhere. So the pressure on this Gutekunst and LaFleur this offseason to figure out the quarterback situation, for everything that went wrong with Josh, his interpersonal skills, his ability to relate, Raider Nation not liking him, maybe the alumni turning on him. If Jimmy Garoppolo had just been good, if Jimmy Garoppolo was just playing like the 13th best quarterback and throwing some touchdowns and they were 4-4, he wouldn't be fired, right? What ultimately did him under was Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't just bad. He was beyond atrocious. He couldn't be any worse. He's missed games and he leads the league in interceptions. And his interceptions is one thing. Well, a couple were tipped. One he slipped. It's like hitting guys in the hands. Interceptions that aren't even close. When you consistently miss on the quarterback position, you got problems. So the Packers, you're going to get one more bite at the apple, and you better make it count. A couple other things looking around the league. Matt Stafford hurt. This is why I shorted the Rams when the season started. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I didn't know what the injury was going to be. I just bet on him getting injured. And now he's got a thumb injury. It's looking like he's not going to play this week. I think the Rams are in free fall. I said it during the trade deadline. I would have traded Aaron Donald. I would have reset my franchise. You're losing games with him. And every game he plays, his value diminishes a little. Plus, there's always the risk that he get injured again. So Stafford, we never really got the information on Stetson Bennett, who they drafted, in the 4th round and then just disappeared. Bizarre situation, but Matt Stafford's hurt. The Rams, they're screwed. Deshaun Watson's still injured. Kind of like the Stetson Bennett situation, a little different. It's just weird. That's all to say. It's just weird. And when you pay a guy this much money and he can't play and your team's good, it's pretty devastating, man. It really is. Now, I know when he's played, he hasn't been anywhere near what they traded for or the guy they thought they were trading for. But if you got to play PJ Walker, you're just going to lose more games than you win. I don't care if your defense becomes the 85 Bears defense. Speaking of the Bears, it just never ends. It just never freaking ends. Yesterday, they traded a 2nd-round pick for a pass rusher that they're going to eventually have to pay $25 million when they could have just paid him $26 million and kept the 2nd-round pick. Still baffled by that 24 hours later. Today, they fired their running back coach. And I was expecting, we need a spark on offense. I think his last name's Coach Walker, his family, the best moving forward. We appreciate everything he did. That was not the statement. The statement was basically there was a standard that we hold ourselves to, and he didn't meet the standard. So something happened again. And they had a defensive coordinator resign. He had to fire a running back coach. This Eberflus situation is getting worse. I do not see how Matt Eberflus is the coach of the Chicago Bears in 2024. I can't see it. Anyone else in his shoes, firing coaches left and right, potential police raids on guys' home, having to fire a guy for HR reasons, a coach. I mean, that's crazy. I can't remember the last time, for something that's not public. Like we've seen, remember we saw the one coach, maybe it was an executive for the Lions, drive through Taco Bell naked. Shanahan's offensive line coach, did a little line when he had the stripper girlfriend. He got fired. Like we've seen situations where coaches get fired. It's like, yeah, you got to fire him, even if you don't want to fire him. But you don't see situations like, what are the details? Like, wait, he's not just bad at his job. No, it's not really performance based. It's just something really bad happened. We can't publicly say. That's usually how you get fired as a head coach, because all these guys reflect you, even though they're all grown-ups, they're all making good money. Major problem for the Bears. More and more, I thought about Chase Young to the Niners. Like the clock's ticking for Steve Wilks. If he can't get this defense back on track and they don't make a legit run again and their defense underperforms, he's going to be a one-and-done defensive coordinator. He really is. You can't have Chase Young and Nick Bosa and Fred Warner and Drake Greenlaw and Eric Armstead and Javon Hargraves and Hufanga and Charvarius Ward and your defense getting sliced and diced on a weekly basis. It's one thing if, on a given week, A.J. Brown beats you and you lose a game. It's another thing if P.J. Walker beats you and then Kirk Cousins has a career day against you and then Joe Burrow looks like an MVP against you. It's like, are you going to slow down anybody? Do you have any, like, if your fastball is not working, right? Eventually you got to try another pitch. Eventually you got to throw a changeup or a curveball. If every single person's hitting your fastball, inside, outside, high, low, you got to come with a different pitch. So to me, a lot of pressure on him. Heineke starting for the Falcons. Another team with just a quarterback issue. Like, what are the Falcons going to do? Obviously, Desmond Ridder backup. Heineke clearly just more of a bridge. Maybe he gives them a little spark. I actually kind of always liked Taylor Heineke. But the Falcons, I thought, had Kirk Cousins written all over them. That clearly is probably not going to happen. And speaking of Kirk Cousins, tears Achilles on Sunday. And Tuesday night before he has surgery, he goes to the Minnesota Vikings indoor, like, family trick-or-treat on a scooter. I can't remember in recent memory a guy that, like, everyone kind of universally made fun of. Kind of a puss, overrated, geek to just, you watch that Netflix special, you're like, God, I kind of regret all the things I've said about him. I really like Kirk Cousins. I really appreciate him. Anyone that watches it with their wife or their girlfriend, they talk about him a lot. Like, I love that guy and his wife that was buying him, Coles Bucks, and it's a sad situation. But one thing we've seen with Cousins, super high character, worked his ass off. And even if his best football now is behind him, talk about a guy that maximized every penny in every bit and every ounce of his ability, right? He doesn't have the talent of a lot of guys that fail, but he just refused to not make it and refused to not become a good player. Still had flaws and still not a guy ideally you would look to do better. But if he was your quarterback, I think we've learned you can do a lot worse.